I never thought I would live to see the day when my own son would try to throw me out of the house I built with these hands. Every nail, every board, every brick, everything was laid by me. The house in Irwindale became my refuge, my fortress. The place where I spent 40 years with Elaine, where we raised our children, where I hope to spend the rest of my days. My name is Edwin Pruitt, and I'm 65. I've worked as a building inspector most of my life, and I know everything about houses from foundation to roof. Elaine died 3 years ago, taking part of my soul with her. The house was empty, too big for one person. At some point, I thought it was wrong to live alone in a 4-bedroom house when my son Benjamin and his wife Samantha and 2 children were squatting in a 2-bedroom apartment. That was my first mistake. I invited them to live with me. "Dad, it's temporary until we save for a down payment on a house of our own," Ben said then, hugging me with gratitude in his eyes. Samantha, his wife, smiled and nodded and promised that they would help me around the house. "You won't have to be alone, Edwin. We'll take care of you," she said, and I believed it. After all, what could be more natural than a family living under one roof? Things went smoothly for the first few months. The children, my grandchildren, Ethan and Chloe, filled the house with laughter and energy that had been sorely lacking since Elaine left. I helped with homework, took them to the park, taught Ethan how to hold a hammer. Ben was working late. Samantha was hanging out with her clients. She's a real estate agent, one of those people who's always on the phone, always busy, always in a hurry. But gradually something began to change. At first it was little things, almost imperceptible. My pictures of me and Elaine moved from the mantle to the bookshelf, then to the hallway, then disappeared altogether. "Updating the decor," Samantha explained nonchalantly when I asked. My chair, an old comfortable armchair in which I'd spent thousands of evenings reading the newspaper and watching baseball, was suddenly too bulky for the living room. It was moved to a corner of the bedroom where it looked out of place and alien, as did I myself in this new order of things. My large bedroom, the one we shared with Elaine, soon became needed more by Ben and Samantha. "Dad, you don't need that much space, do you?" "And the kids and I are cramped," Ben said one evening, and there was no question in his voice, just affirmation. I moved into the small guest room at the end of the hallway, the one that used to be used for storing things and hosting occasional guests. My tools from the garage moved to the shed in the backyard, for the safety of the kids. My workshop in the basement became a playroom. By the end of the first year, I was living on the periphery of my own home, in one room with minimal belongings, as if I were a tenant rather than a landlord. Samantha began inviting guests, her coworkers, her friends, and envisioned the house as her and Ben's property. "Welcome to our home," she'd say, giving tours while I sat in my room, listening to other people's laughter within the walls I'd built myself. Ben was changing before my eyes. He went from the caring son I remembered him as to an aloof, preoccupied man who barely took the time to talk to me. Our conversations became superficial. Weather, news, sports, nothing personal, nothing important. He no longer asked for my advice, nor was he interested in my affairs. He seemed to be slowly forgetting that I was his father, not just an old man living in their house. Samantha controlled everything from the menu to the schedule for using the common areas. "Edwin, we'll be having dinner at 6. Try to have the kitchen clear by then." Or, "Edwin, we have guests this weekend. Would you mind spending the day at your friend Raymond's house?" I felt invisible, a ghost within the walls of the house that had once been my refuge. Even the grandchildren, my beloved Ethan and Chloe, were slowly drifting away. "Grandpa needs peace," Samantha would tell them when they knocked on my door. "Don't bother Grandpa. He has a headache," even when his head was perfectly fine. Last Christmas, I bought Ethan a construction set, the same one he'd been dreaming about all year. I could see the excitement in his eyes when he unwrapped the gift, but the joy was quickly replaced with confusion when Samantha intervened. "Honey, it's too complicated for you. Let's put it away for now." The constructor disappeared, and I never saw Ethan play with it again. I started avoiding common areas so I wouldn't have to face Samantha's cold stares and Ben's awkward silences. My lunches and dinners became lonely meals in my small room. I installed a small refrigerator and microwave to minimize time in the kitchen. The quiet estrangement turned to open defiance about 6 months ago. I overheard Samantha on the phone saying, "Yeah, the house is huge, but we can't sell it yet. You know, the problem with elderly relatives." She was talking about me as a problem to be solved. Everything changed 2 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday, unusually hot for May. I was on my way back from Raymond, my old friend and business partner. Few people know, but all these years I owned a small construction company registered to Raymond. It was my safety net, my backup plan, my secret from my family. Ben always assumed I was living solely on my inspector's pension. He didn't know about my savings, my investments, the business that had generated a steady income all these years. I came home earlier than usual. The door was unlocked, the house was silent. I thought no one was home, and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I walked past the study that had once been mine and was now used by Ben, I heard muffled voices. Samantha and Ben. "How much longer are we going to wait? The house should be ours, Ben. Your father isn't forever." Samantha's voice sounded annoyed, with a note of impatience that I was already well aware of. I know. But we can't just put him out on the street. He is my father after all." Ben sounded unsure, as if he was making excuses. "Mister, Brody said there's a way. If we can prove that he can't take care of himself, that his mental state is deteriorating, the court could declare him incompetent, and then you, as next of kin, would become his guardian, and the house would be under your control." Mr. Brody, the lawyer Samantha worked with on her real estate business. They were consulting with a lawyer on how to take my house away from me. My own son was planning to have me declared insane. "But he's perfectly fine. His mental clarity is better than mine," Ben objected, and for a moment I felt a glimmer of hope. "Brody says it's not a problem. We just need to document the weirdness. Forgetfulness, confusion, maybe even aggression. Older people have these outbursts. No one's going to dig deep." Samantha spoke in a businesslike tone, as if she were discussing the sale of yet another house, not the life of a living person. "I don't know. Ben, think about the kids. They need room to grow. Think about our future. This house is worth almost $1 million. It's our inheritance, Ben. Our future. Do you want it to slip away from us?" There was a pause. I stood against the wall, not daring to breathe. Then I heard Ben's heavy sigh. "Okay, let's talk to Brody again." I backed away carefully, trying not to give away my presence, and quietly walked outside. Got in my car and sat there for a long time, trying to comprehend what I'd heard. My son, my only son, was planning to declare me incapacitated so he could take possession of my house. That night changed everything. I came back later, pretending I didn't know anything. I smiled at dinner, asked about my grandchildren, talked about the weather, but inside me a plan was brewing. The next day I visited the bank and checked my accounts. $283,000 in basic savings, with another $100,000 or so in stocks and bonds, plus a construction company that was worth about $500,000. Not a huge fortune, but enough to start a new life. I checked the safe deposit box where all the important documents were kept: the house ownership certificate, the company papers, the will. Then I visited my longtime friend and attorney, Peter Lang. Unlike Mr. Brody, Peter was an old-school man with an impeccable reputation and a sharp mind. I told him everything without withholding details. "Edwin, this is serious," Peter said, tapping his pencil on the desk. "But they have no grounds for it. You're in perfect health of clear mind. Any doctor will attest to that. They'll look for proof, Peter." "Will provoke me. Document my oddities," I chuckled bitterly. "My sister-in-law is quite resourceful." Peter hesitated. "Then we need to get ahead of them. First, I'll arrange for an independent medical examination, a full examination, including a psychiatric evaluation. Second, let's rearrange your assets so they're protected." "And the house?" I asked. "The house I built with my own hands for my family." Peter looked at me for a long moment. "A house is only the walls, Edwin. It's what's inside that matters. And from what you've told me, the inside of your house hasn't been family for a long time." I knew he was right, but that didn't make it any easier. The house was my life, my memories, my legacy. But now it had become a battleground, an object of greed. Over the next week, I began quiet preparations, had a full medical examination. The results were excellent for a man of my age. Consulted with a psychiatrist who documented my sanity and mental clarity. Transferred some assets into more secure forms, out of reach of potential guardians. Raymond offered me an apartment owned by our company. Spacious, in a good neighborhood, fully furnished. "It's yours when you need it," he said. At home, I tried to act normal, not showing that I knew about their plans. I watched as Samantha began her campaign. Little provocations designed to piss me off. She would accidentally throw out my things, change the settings on my TV, rearrange items in my room. "Edwin, you left the stove on. It's dangerous," she said with feigned concern, even though I remembered exactly that I had turned it off. "Dad, have you forgotten that we arranged to meet yesterday? We waited for you at the restaurant," Ben was saying with a concerned look on his face, even though there was no arrangement. They started documenting these incidents. I saw Samantha making notes on her phone after each such incident. They were preparing a dossier on me, their own case against their children's father and grandfather. And I waited, waiting and preparing, because I knew the moment was coming when they would make their move. And when that moment came, I'd be ready. In the evening, looking through old photo albums in my room, I came across a picture taken almost 40 years ago. It showed me, young and enthusiastic, standing in front of an unfinished house. Next to me was Elaine, pregnant with Ben, smiling as if the whole world belonged to us. We were so happy then, so full of hope. I ran my finger over Elaine's face in the picture. "What would you do, darling?" I whispered into the emptiness of the room, and it was as if I heard her voice. "What must be done, Edwin? What must be done?" I closed the album and put it away in the suitcase I had been slowly filling with the most important things for a week now. It was time to prepare for the final act of this family drama. Raymond Hutton had always been punctual. In the 35 years of our friendship and business partnership, he had never been more than 5 minutes late. Now, at precisely 10 o'clock in the morning, his tattered blue pickup truck pulled up outside Joe's Cafe, our traditional meeting place on the outskirts of Irwindale. I watched through the window as he got out of the car, a heavy-set man with thinning gray hair, wearing worn jeans and a plaid shirt. Raymond looked like a typical retired construction worker, which technically he was. But little did he know that beneath that plain exterior lurked a sharp business mind and unwavering loyalty. He noticed me, nodded, and limped toward the door. An old knee injury sustained in the 80s on one of the construction sites reminded me of itself more and more every year. "You look lousy, Ed," he said instead of greeting me, sinking heavily into the chair across from me. "Good morning to you, too," I smiled involuntarily. Raymond's straightforwardness always had a calming effect on me. "Don't mess with me. I know you like the back of my hand. Something's wrong." The waitress brought coffee, black and strong for Raymond, with milk for me. Old habits. "Ben and Samantha," I began when she stepped away. "They want to declare me incompetent." Raymond froze with the cup to his mouth, then slowly set it on the table. "Say that again." I told him about the overheard conversation, the consultations with the lawyer, the minor provocations and documentation of my weirdness. With each word, his face grew darker and darker. "Little shits," he said at last. "I'm sorry, Ed, but your son—" "I know," I interrupted him. "Believe me, I know." Raymond was silent for a moment, then asked, "What are you going to do?" "For starters, protect my assets. Peter's helping with the legal side, but the house—" I stopped talking, unable to say out loud what I'd been thinking about for the last few days. "The house you built with your own hands," Raymond finished for me. He sounded understanding. He was there when I laid the foundation, helped put up the rafters, saw me put my heart into every corner of this building. "I can't just give it to them, Ray. Not after what they're planning to do." "Of course you can't," he leaned closer. "Do you have a plan?" I only had the germ of a plan, a vague idea. But talking to Raymond, it began to take shape. "I could sell the house," I said quietly, as if tasting the words, "while it was still officially mine." Raymond whistled. "That would be radical." "They're leaving me no choice, Ray. They want to declare me crazy and lock me up somewhere to take possession of the house. I'm just one step ahead of them." "What about the grandchildren?" Raymond asked. He knew how much I loved Ethan and Chloe. That was the question that tormented me the most. I shook my head. Samantha had already turned them against me. They hardly ever come into my room, and when they do, she's always there, controlling every word. I took a sip of my coffee, which was already getting cold. Shikana, maybe when they're older, they'll understand. Raymond nodded. Have you talked to Peter yet? About the sale? We have a meeting tomorrow, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Will you be able to join us? Sure. Raymond put his massive palm on my hand. We've been through a lot together, Ed. We'll get through this too. I felt more confident after seeing Raymond. On the way home, I stopped by the bank and double-checked my financial records. Everything was in order. The accounts that only I had access to contained enough funds for a new beginning. At home, another incident was waiting for me. Samantha intercepted me in the hallway, her face expressing feigned concern. Edwin, you left water in the bathroom. The whole floor is flooded. I distinctly remembered closing the faucet. In fact, I wiped the sink dry, as I always do. Really? I tried to make my voice sound confused. I'm sorry, Samantha. I must have forgotten. She nodded as if that was the answer she expected, and I noticed her making a note on her phone as soon as I turned my back to her. Another item in their file against me. In the evening, Ben came in. He looked tired and avoided making eye contact with me. Hey, Dad, he said as he walked past me in the living room. How are you doing? Not bad, I replied. And you? The usual. He shrugged and was about to leave, but I stopped him. Ben, I called out. Do you have a minute? I want to talk to you. He hesitated, then nodded and sat down across from me. What is it? I looked at my son carefully. There were wrinkles on his face and gray in his hair. When did he get so old? When did this wall grow between us? I'm thinking about changing my will, I said calmly. Ben tensed but tried to hide it. You are. His voice sounded neutral, but I could see his fingers tightening on the arm of the chair. Yes, I continued. I'm thinking about splitting the inheritance between you and Olivia. Ben's face twitched at the mention of his sister. They hadn't spoken in years after a big fight over the inheritance of their uncle, Elaine's brother. Olivia lived in Oregon and barely kept in touch with her family. I rarely spoke to her either, especially after Elaine's death. Largely because of the influence of Ben and Samantha, who always found reasons why a call or visit to their daughter was inconvenient or untimely. Olivia, Ben interjected. Why? She doesn't even visit you. She's my daughter, I answered simply. And I'm your son. His voice got harder. I'm here for you. We take care of you. I noted the we, not I, but we like he was part of the team standing against me. Of course, I agreed, and I was grateful for that. But Olivia's entitled to a piece of the inheritance too. She abandoned you, Ben almost spit out the words. After Mom died, she didn't even come to visit. And now you want to give her half? I haven't decided exactly how to distribute the assets, I said, just thinking out loud. Ben stood up, his face flushed with barely contained anger. Do as you wish, he said. It's your property. It's still mine, I remarked, watching his reaction. He froze for a moment, then quickly left the room. I knew he'd go straight to Samantha and tell her about our conversation. I wondered how soon they would take the next step. The next day I met Peter Lang and Raymond at the lawyer's office, a small but cozy space in an old building downtown. Peter, a thin man with a neat beard and shrewd eyes, had been my lawyer for 20 years. So, Edwin, he began as we settled into his office, Raymond told me about your idea. To sell the house, I nodded. Could it be done? Quickly and quietly? Peter drummed his fingers on the table thoughtfully. Basically, yes. The house is all yours, no co-owners. You're of sound mind, as confirmed by a recent medical examination. There are no legal obstacles, he said. But there is a moral issue. Moral? I questioned. They're planning to declare me insane, Peter. Where's the morality in that? It's about the children, Edwin. Your grandchildren. This is their home, too. I clenched my fists. It was an argument I'd replayed in my head an infinite number of times. They'll find a new home, I said firmly. Ben makes good money. Samantha, too. They won't end up on the street. But the eviction will be a shock, Peter pointed out, especially for the kids. Less of a shock than if their grandfather was declared incompetent and taken to a nursing home. Raymond interjected. Peter, you haven't seen what's going on in that house? They turned Ed into a ghost, an unwelcome guest within his own walls. Peter sighed. Dash, I understand. I just want you to be sure of your decision, Edwin. It's a big step. I'm sure, I said, but I want to do it right, legally, and without the possibility of challenging the deal later. Okay, Peter nodded. Then we need a plan. First, find a buyer who will agree to a quick deal. Second, prepare all the documents in advance. Third, choose the right moment. I know an investor, Raymond said. He's been interested in Irwindale real estate for a long time. I think he'll agree to a quick deal for a reasonable price. Great. Peter made a note in his notebook. What about a new situation for you, Edwin? Where will you be moving to? I have a company apartment, I nodded at Raymond. I'll live there temporarily, then maybe buy something smaller. What about your stuff? Peter asked. There's bound to be a lot of personal items in the house. Furniture. I shrugged. I'll take the essentials. The rest? I hesitated. The rest was just stuff. But we all knew it wasn't. The house was filled with the memories of 40 years of my life. Photos, letters, Elaine's things I kept, Ben and Olivia's childhood drawings, the baseball card collection we'd collected with my son when he was little. The thought of having to leave it all behind was painful. You could hire movers, Raymond suggested. Get everything valuable out quickly when they're out of the house. I shook my head. No, I won't be sneaking around in my own house. When the time comes, I'll leave with my head held high and take what is rightfully mine. After meeting with Peter and Raymond, the plan began to take shape. Raymond contacted an investor he knew, Hugh Burke, who expressed interest in buying the house. Peter began preparing the necessary paperwork. I began to sort through my belongings, deciding what I would take with me and what I would leave behind. At home, the situation was getting more and more tense. Samantha made little secret of her impatience. Her provocations became more and more obvious and aggressive. Friday night, while I was watching a baseball game in the living room, one of the few privileges I still had, she purposely turned on the vacuum cleaner, drowning out the sound of the TV. Samantha, I called out, can we clean up later? I'm watching the game. She didn't even look in my direction. I'm sorry, Edwin, but we have company tomorrow. We need the house in order. I knew she was lying. No guests were planned. At least they weren't mentioned to me. I could help with the cleaning tomorrow morning, I offered. No, she shook her head with a fake smile. You rest. At your age, you need to conserve your energy. Her voice sounded condescending, as if I were a frail old man, not someone who had worked physically all his life and was still in great shape. I silently stood up and went to my room. It was a small victory for her, another way to show her who was boss. But I knew that would soon change. On Saturday, Ben approached me with a serious talk. We were sitting at a table in the backyard, away from the ears of Samantha and the kids. Dad, he began, choosing his words carefully. Dash, Samantha and I are worried about you. Are we? I tried to make my voice sound surprised. Yes. He rubbed the bridge of his nose in a gesture that always gave away his excitement. We've noticed some changes in your behavior. What kind of changes? I asked calmly. Well, you've become forgetful. Leaving the water running, the stove on. Sometimes he stammered. You talk to yourself. That last one was an outright lie. I've never had that habit. Really? I raised my eyebrows. I hadn't noticed myself. It's often invisible to the person, Ben said in an expert tone. Samantha and I were thinking, maybe you should see a doctor, just to check it out. What doctor? I pretended to be naive. A neurologist. Or maybe a psychiatrist. Ben tried to be casual, but I could see the tension in his eyes. Do you think I'm going crazy? I asked bluntly. No. He waved his hands hastily. It's normal for your age to have some memory loss, confusion, and there are medications that can help. I see, I nodded. And who's going to pay for this doctor and medication? Samantha and I, of course. Ben smiled as if he was doing me a favor. Don't worry about that. What if I say no? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. Ben's smile twitched. Why should you say no? It's for your own good. Sure, I agreed. But hypothetically, what if I said no? Ben was silent for a few seconds, then he said carefully, Dad, Samantha and I are really worried. If you refuse to help, it could be dangerous. For you and for the kids. There it is. A threat veiled with concern. I'll think about it, I finally said. Thank you for your concern, son. He had clearly expected more resistance and looked a little confused by my calmness. Okay, he said, standing up. Just think about it, okay? I nodded, watching him walk away into the house. I knew for sure now that they weren't going to stop. They had come too far to back down. My son was ready to declare his father crazy for the sake of the house. The house I had built for him, for our family. That night I called Raymond. They've made a move, I said without preamble. Ben suggested I consult a doctor. Hinted that if I didn't, I might be a danger to the kids. Bastards, Raymond scolded. How soon do you want to act? I took a deep breath. As soon as everything is ready. We need to get ahead of them, Ray, before they do something more serious. Hugh is ready to move forward, Raymond said. He's looked at the house from the outside, likes the neighborhood, says he doesn't even need to look inside. He'll take it in any condition. Offers a little below market value for a quick deal. How much? Raymond quoted an amount that was about 15% below the current market value. It was still very good money. Tell him I'm in, I decided. How quickly can we close the deal? Peter says he can have all the documents ready by Wednesday. If Hugh agrees, we can close the deal on Thursday or Friday. That soon? I was surprised. Hugh works with cash, no mortgage. And he knows Peter, trusts him. Things can be done quickly if you're sure. I closed my eyes and pictured the house. Every corner, every room, every memory. Then I pictured Samantha's face when she yelled at me, Ben's face when he talked about the doctors. And I made a decision, I'm sure. Let's do it. I spent the next few days preparing for the inevitable. I gathered all my important documents, photos, personal items that mattered to me. I packed them in suitcases and small boxes that I kept in my room. No one paid any attention to it. My room was the only place in the house that Samantha rarely looked in. I decided to see how far Ben was willing to go in his betrayal. On Wednesday night, when the sale papers were ready and all that was left to do was sign them, I approached my son as he watched television in the living room. Ben, I began, I've been thinking about what you said, about the doctor. He straightened up, instantly wary. Maybe you're right, I said, watching his reaction. I've really been feeling not quite right lately. Ben's face brightened, and there was a flash of triumph in his eyes that he tried to hide. Dad, it's a big decision, he said with feigned seriousness. I'm proud of you. Proud that his father had agreed to pretend to be crazy? Those words hurt more than I expected. Thank you, son, I forced myself to smile. When can we arrange this consultation? I've already made inquiries, Ben answered too quickly, revealing that everything had been planned in advance. There's an excellent specialist doctor, Murphy. He can see you on Friday. Friday, the day we plan to close on the sale of the house. Sounds good, I said. What time? 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll take the day off to drive you. No need, I shook my head. I can drive myself. You know I still drive. No. Ben was insistent. I want to be with you, support you, or make sure I do go to the doctor, who probably already has instructions from Samantha or her lawyer. Okay, I agreed. Thanks for your concern. I left for my room, feeling his gaze on my back. The son I'd raised, the one I'd taught to ride a bike, the one I'd read bedtime stories to, was planning to send me to a specialist to confirm my incapacity. For the house, for the money, it was time to act. Thursday began as usual. I woke up at 6 in the morning, a habit developed over decades of working on construction sites. I lay there for a few minutes, listening to the silence of the house, then quietly got up, trying not to creak the floorboards. In the last few months, I'd learned to move around my own house like a ghost, stealthy and silent. I made myself some coffee and went out to the backyard, where I still had a little nook, an old bench under the apple tree Elaine and I had planted the first year we lived in the house. The tree had grown strong, blossomed with white and pink flowers every spring, and in the fall it bore tart, juicy fruit. Elaine used to make an amazing apple pie with them. The recipe died with her. Samantha had no interest in baking, and I never learned to replicate the magical combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla that my wife created. I sat watching the sun slowly rise over the rooftops of the neighboring houses, coloring the sky a soft pink. It was my ritual, my meditation, my way of starting the day at peace with myself. Today it had a special meaning. I felt it was one of the last dawns I would greet in this yard, under this apple tree. At 9 o'clock, I called Peter to make sure everything was ready for the deal tomorrow. Everything is in order, Edwin, the lawyer assured me. Hugh is in full agreement with the terms. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we meet in my office to sign the documents. After that, the money will be transferred to your account. And the eviction notice, I asked? Peter sighed. It will be delivered by courier as soon as the deal is finalized. 30 days to vacate the premises, as we agreed. Oh, Mom. Thank you, Peter, I said, for everything. Don't thank me, Edwin. His voice sounded serious. Just be sure it's what you really want. I am sure, I replied, and it was true. After talking to Ben last night, the last of my doubts were gone. Walking back into the house, I ran into Samantha. She was standing in the kitchen talking on the phone and interrupted when she saw me. I'll call you back, she said quickly and disconnected. Edwin? Her tone was emphatically polite but cold. Ben said you agreed to see Dr. Murphy tomorrow. Yes, I confirmed. At 10 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. Not 10 o'clock, but 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she corrected with irritation. I told Ben to write it down for you. Your memory's getting worse. I knew she was lying. Ben had clearly said 10 o'clock in the morning. They were playing tricks on me, making my forgetfulness appear. I'm sorry, you're right, I smiled guiltily. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Samantha nodded, satisfied with my submission. I've prepared a list of things to discuss with the doctor, she said, pulling a piece of paper out of her bag. Your episodes of forgetfulness, your mood swings, the times you talk to yourself, every item on that list was a fabrication, a distortion of reality, or an outright lie. I never talked to myself, never forgot to turn off the stove or faucet, never had mood swings. But Samantha methodically created the image of an old man with dementia who needed to be cared for, or more accurately, controlled. Very detailed, I remarked, looking over the list. You must have spent a lot of time compiling it. Ben and I have been worried about you for a long time, she said with fake concern in her voice. We just finally decided to take action. I understand, I said, handing the paper back to her. Thank you for your concern. I left for my room, feeling her gaze on my back. They were in a hurry. Perhaps they sensed I was up to something, or maybe they were just afraid I might change my mind about the doctor. The rest of the day passed relatively quietly. I made final preparations, double-checking the documents I planned to take with me, packing the most valuable personal items into a small bag that I could quickly grab and leave. In the evening, Ben returned from work earlier than usual. He looked strung out, nervous. After barely saying hello to me, he disappeared into the bedroom where Samantha was waiting for him. I could hear their muffled voices, but I couldn't make out the words. Something was brewing, and I could feel it in my skin. The grandchildren, Ethan and Chloe, were unusually quiet at dinner. Usually they talked about school and friends, but tonight they hardly looked up from their plates. Samantha controlled their every movement, every word. When Chloe tried to tell me about her science project, Samantha gently but insistently turned the conversation to another topic. After dinner, Ben asked the kids to go to their rooms and do their homework. This was unusual. Usually they watched TV or played in the living room until 9 o'clock. I suspected a serious conversation was coming, and so it proved to be. As soon as the kids left, Ben turned to me. Dad, we need to talk, he said seriously, a family council. Sure, I nodded, ready for what was to come. We moved into the living room. Samantha was already waiting there, sitting in a chair with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. Her face was an impenetrable mask, but I could see the impatience in her eyes. Ben sat down next to her and pointed to the couch across from me. It was a classic setup, the two of them against me alone. Dad, Ben began after an awkward pause, Samantha and I have been thinking a lot about your condition and about the future. I waited silently for him to continue. Saranamine, your forgetfulness is becoming a problem, he chose his words, clearly following a prearranged script. We're afraid you might hurt yourself or, God forbid, the children. Yesterday you left the gas on the stove, Samantha intervened. If I hadn't noticed, there could have been a fire. That was an outright lie. I haven't cooked anything on the stove in days, preferring to heat food in the microwave in my room. Really? I acted surprised. I don't remember that. Exactly, Samantha said triumphantly. You don't remember? That's the problem. Ben gave her a warning look. She'd shown her true colors too soon. Dad, he continued in a softer tone, we think you need special care, professional care. Are you talking about a doctor? I asked, even though I knew exactly what he was getting at. Not only that, Ben mumbled. We found a great place. Sunny Hills. It's a, it's a home for the elderly. A nursing home, I clarified. No, no, Ben said hastily. It's a community for active retirees, with medical care, entertainment, everything you need. How much does it cost? I asked. Ben and Samantha looked at each other. Don't worry about it, Ben said. We'll arrange everything. Sirari, on my house, I suppose, I said calmly, without accusation in my voice. Ben looked embarrassed, but Samantha remained unfazed. The house is too big for you alone, Edwin, she said, and it requires constant upkeep. Selling the house will help pay for your stay at Sunny Hills for many years to come. It's a wise decision. I understand, I said. And when do you plan for me to move? The question seemed to take them by surprise. They were expecting resistance, tears, anger, anything but calm acceptance. Well, Ben stammered, we were thinking, maybe after a consultation with Dr. Murphy? If he confirms that you need special care, I'm sure he will, I said with a slight smile. Samantha frowned, sensing something in my tone that she didn't like. Yes, Sonajum, it's for your own good, Edwin, she said with pressure. You'll be safe, watched over. Like a prison, I remarked. Papa, said Ben indignantly. It isn't like that at all. It isn't. I looked him in the eye. You want to lock me up in an active retirement community, sell my house, and control the money from the sale? And I'm fully capable, healthy, and able to take care of myself. How is this different from prison? Because we take care of you. Samantha raised her voice. You can't live alone. You're a danger to yourself and others. Samantha, Ben said warningly, but she couldn't stop now. You're a selfish old man who doesn't think about his family. Her eyes glittered with anger. We've put up with your quirks for years. Your meddling with our children's upbringing. Your endless stories about the good old days. We deserve this house. Deserve it? I raised my eyebrows. What exactly do you deserve it for, Samantha? We took care of you. She was almost screaming. We put up with you. Samantha, stop it. Ben grabbed her arm. You're ruining everything. But the masks were already off. I saw their true faces, their true intentions. They didn't care about me. They were waiting to get rid of me and take my property. I understand, I said, standing up. In that case, I'd better go now. What? Ben looked stunned. Where? Away from here, I said simply, since I'm such a burden to you. Dad, don't be silly, Ben tried to correct the situation. That's not what we meant. No, that's exactly what we meant, I countered. And I'm grateful for Samantha's honesty. At least now I know exactly where I stand. I headed toward my room. Ben followed me, continuing to say something, to explain, to justify himself. I wasn't listening. In my room, I pulled out my pre-prepared bag and suitcase, in which I packed the most necessary things and documents. What are you doing? Ben asked, looking at the bags. Leaving, I answered. Isn't that what you wanted? But not like this. He seemed genuinely upset, but I couldn't believe a word he said. Where are you going to go? I have a place, I said, buttoning up my suitcase. Don't worry about me. Dad, please, Ben tried to take my hand. Let's calm down and discuss everything tomorrow, after we see Dr. Murphy. I released my hand. There's no Dr. Murphy. Ben, I don't need a psychiatrist, and I'm not going to let you declare me incompetent for the sake of the house. His face changed, fear flashed in his eyes. What are you talking about? I heard everything, I said calmly. Your conversation with Samantha about how Mr. Brody would help you declare me incompetent so you could take control of the house. I heard everything, Ben. He turned pale. Dad, you misunderstood. We just wanted to get rid of me and take over my property I finished for him. I got it right. I grabbed my bags and walked past him into the hallway. Samantha was already standing there with her arms crossed over her chest. "Are you leaving?" she asked with ill-concealed satisfaction. "Finally, Samantha!" Ben pulled her back, but it was too late. "What?" She shrugged. "It's his choice to leave. It's his choice." I stopped in front of her. "Yes, my choice. But don't think that's the end of the story, Samantha." Something in my voice made her wary. "What do you mean?" I smiled without answering and continued on my way out. In the hallway, I saw Ethan and Chloe peering out of their room with frightened eyes. "Is Grandpa leaving?" Chloe asked in a trembling voice. I set the bags down and squatted in front of them. "Yes, dear. I need to live apart for a while." "But you'll come back?" Ethan asked. I looked at him, a serious 10-year-old boy with Elaine's eyes. How do you explain to a child the betrayal of his parents? How do I tell him that I might never see them again? "I will always love you," I said instead of a direct answer. "Always remember that." I hugged them both, feeling a lump go down my throat. Then I straightened up, grabbed my bags, and headed for the door. "Dad, wait." Ben tried one last time to stop me. "Let's talk about this." "You can't just leave." "I can," I said. "And I'm leaving." I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. The evening air was fresh and cool. Crickets sang somewhere. A dog barked in the neighbor's yard. An ordinary evening in Irwindale. The last night in the house I'd built with my own hands. Ben came out behind me. "Daddy, please," he sounded desperate. "Where will you go? How will you live?" At that moment, Samantha came out onto the porch. Her face expressed a look of triumph, poorly disguised as concern. "Edwin, don't be childish," she said. "Come back to the house. We'll discuss this like adults." "I've already talked it over and made up my mind," I replied, walking down the stairs. "But this is your house," Ben exclaimed, and I could hear the note of panic in his voice. "Not because of me, not because of the house he was about to lose." "Was mine," I corrected him. "It's yours now." "Dad," Ben took a step toward me. "You can't just leave us the house. There's paperwork to be done, a will." Even as his father walked away with 2 bags into the unknown, Ben was thinking about the legal side of things, about how to secure the title to the property. "Don't worry," I said. "It'll all be formalized." I reached my car, an old but well-maintained Ford, and loaded the bags into the trunk. Samantha stood on the porch, watching me with undisguised satisfaction. Ben looked confused, not knowing whether to rejoice at the fulfillment of their plan or worry about the legal ramifications. I got behind the wheel and started the engine. I rolled down the window and looked at my house, a 2-story building with a white fence, red roof, and an apple tree in the backyard. The house where most of my life had been spent. The house where my children were born, where I grew old with the woman I loved, where I hoped to meet my last days. "Goodbye," I said quietly. Not to the house, but to the memories it held. As I began to pull into the driveway, Samantha couldn't take it anymore. The triumph demanded an outlet. "Suck-in, the house would finally be ours alone," she shouted, her voice echoing down the quiet street. "Just ours." I didn't answer. I didn't turn around. I just kept driving, leaving behind 40 years of life and an only son who preferred home to his father. It took about 20 minutes to get to Raymond's apartment. The whole time I drove on autopilot, barely noticing traffic lights and turns. My mind was reeling with snippets of conversation, images, memories. Samantha's face contorted with gloating. Ben's confused face. The terrified eyes of the grandchildren. Raymond was waiting for me in the parking lot. When he saw my car, he got up from the bench and came over to help with my bags. "Is everything okay?" he asked, peering into my face. "No," I answered honestly. "But it will be." We went up to the apartment, spacious, bright, with minimalist furniture and large windows. Raymond showed me the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, and handed me the keys. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "Consider this place your home for as long as it takes." "Thanks, Ray," I squeezed his shoulder. "For everything." He nodded, understanding without words. "Would you like a drink?" he asked. "I've got a nice whiskey." "Not tonight," I shook my head. "Tonight I just need to, uh, alone tonight." "I understand." He headed for the door. "If you need anything, call me anytime." When Raymond left, I sat down on the couch, and for the first time in the whole crazy evening, I let myself feel pain. It came in waves, sharp, all-consuming. The pain of betrayal, loss, the shattering of illusions. I thought I had prepared for this moment, that I had accepted the inevitable, but the reality was much harder. My son, my only son, betrayed me, chose material possessions over his father, allowed himself to be manipulated by his greedy wife, to be turned into a co-conspirator against his own father. I didn't cry. The tears had long since dried up. After Elaine's death, after the first signs of Ben's estrangement, after the many small betrayals that led to today's big one. In place of the tears came determination, a cold, hard certainty that I was doing the right thing. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning, I will sign the papers to sell the house. Hugh Burke will get the property at a bargain price, and I'll get my freedom and the means for a new life. Ben and Samantha will receive an eviction notice. 30 days to find a new place to live. This wasn't just retribution, it was justice being served. I had built this house for a family that would love and respect each other. A family that no longer existed. I went to bed, but sleep didn't come for a long time. Samantha's face was in front of me as she shouted after me, "We'll finally have a home that's all ours." She didn't know that tomorrow this house would no longer be theirs, that their triumph would last less than a day. For the first time in many months, I felt something akin to contentment. Not happiness, that was still a long way off, but satisfaction at the thought that justice would be done, even at such a bitter cost. I woke to the sun beaming down on my face through the uncurtained window. Raymond's apartment faced east, and the morning sun cast a golden glow on the bedroom. For a moment, I didn't realize where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling, the unfamiliar bed, the absence of familiar sounds, the ticking of the old clock in the hallway, the creak of floorboards under Samantha's footsteps, the children's laughter. Then the memories of last night came in a wave. The family council, Samantha's confessions, my leaving. Finally, the house will be ours alone, echoed in my head. I glanced at my watch. 7 in the morning. The meeting with Peter and Hugh was scheduled for 11. I had plenty of time to get myself cleaned up and mentally prepared for what was to come. I showered, shaved, put on a fresh shirt and pants, one of the few things I'd brought from home. I had breakfast of coffee and toast, which the thoughtful Raymond had left in the refrigerator. All of these ordinary, everyday activities had a strange, surreal feel to them. It was as if I were playing a part in a movie about my own life. At 9 o'clock, the phone rang. Ben. I stared at the screen for a while, not knowing if I should answer it. Then I took the call. "Yes," I said dryly. "Dad," Ben's voice sounded worried. "Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I answered. "I'm staying with a friend." "What friend?" There was disbelief in his voice. "You don't have any friends except Raymond." Those words hurt. Not because of their meaning, really my circle of close friends was limited to Raymond, Peter, and a couple other people. What hurt was that my own son spoke of it with such disdain. "Raymond's," I confirmed. "I'm fine here." "Dad, listen." Ben cut to the chase. "What happened yesterday?" Samantha didn't mean it. She was upset, agitated. We both were. She said exactly what she meant, I countered. And I'm grateful for her honesty. At least now I know how things are. "No, you don't understand," Ben insisted. "We just wanted you to be comfortable and safe. The house is too big for one person. It requires constant care." "I was doing fine," I interrupted him. "And I would have kept doing it if you hadn't decided that the house should belong to you." There was a pause. I could almost see Ben searching for words, trying to find an approach that would get me to come back. "Dad," he finally said, "I understand that you're upset, but let's talk about this like adults. Come home, and we'll talk about it. We'll find a solution that works for everyone." "I've already found a solution," I said, "and it works for me." "What solution?" His voice became tense. "You'll see," I said. "Shana, now if you'll excuse me, I have to go. I have a meeting." "What meeting?" Ben was clearly getting nervous. "Dad, what are you up to?" "Goodbye, Ben," I said, and turned off the phone. I turned off the sound, knowing that he would call back. I needed to focus on my upcoming meeting, not be distracted by fruitless conversations. At 10:30, I pulled up to Peter's office. Hugh Burke was already there. A stocky man in his 50s with attentive eyes and a firm handshake. He spoke little but matter-of-factly. The ideal business partner for such a transaction. Mr. Pruitt, he greeted me. It's a pleasure to meet you. Raymond's told me a lot about you. Nothing bad, I hope, I joked, shaking his hand. Only the best, he smiled. He said you built that house with your own hands. Impressive. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Talking about the house still brought a painful lump to my throat. Peter invited us into the meeting room, where all the necessary documents were already laid out. He briefly explained the nature of the transaction. A standard real estate purchase and sale, with some expedited procedures that would allow the deal to close the same day. Normally, such transactions take weeks, Peter explained. But since Mr. Burke is paying cash and no mortgage approval is required, we can speed up the process considerably. Hugh nodded. I've seen the house from the outside. The location is great. The neighborhood is developing. It's a good investment, even without a detailed inspection of the interior. The house is in good condition, I assured him. I've always kept up with the maintenance. I don't doubt it, Hugh said. Raymond says you're a real professional. We moved on to signing the documents. Each page, each signature, brought me closer to the moment when the house would no longer be mine. Strangely, I didn't feel as much pain as I expected. It was more like relief, like a heavy burden being lifted from my shoulders. That's it, Peter said when the last signature was done. Congratulations, Mr. Burke. You own a beautiful home. Mr. Pruitt, the funds will be transferred to your account within the hour. Hugh shook my hand. Thank you for the deal, Mr. Pruitt. I'll take good care of the house. I know, I said. And call me Edwin, please. Only if you call me Hugh, he smiled. We exchanged phone numbers in case there were any questions about the house or the grounds. Hugh seemed like a decent man, and the thought that the house was going into good hands made it a little less painful to part with him. After Hugh left, Peter and I stayed in the meeting room. Are you all right? He asked, looking at me carefully. Yes, I nodded. Better than I expected. What about the eviction notice? Peter pulled out another document. It's ready. 30 days, like we agreed. I took the paper and ran my eyes over it. An official notice that the new owner of the property requires vacating the premises within 30 days of receipt. Do you want me to arrange for delivery? Peter asked. Or would you prefer to do it yourself? I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wanted to personally deliver that notice, to see Ben and Samantha's faces when they realized what had happened. But the other part, the part that still loved my son, despite all his betrayals, didn't want this confrontation. I'd rather be a courier, I finally decided, official and impersonal. Peter nodded. I'll arrange for delivery today, with a return receipt so they can't deny receipt. Thank you, Peter, I squeezed his hand, for everything. Don't thank me, he shook his head. I'm just doing my job. I'm sorry about the way things turned out, Edwin. Me too, I sighed. But some lessons have to be learned the hard way. As I left Peter's office, I felt a strange emptiness. The deed was done. The house that had been the center of my life for 40 years no longer belonged to me. I was free from obligations, from illusions, from the weight of the past. But this freedom had the flavor of loneliness. I decided not to go straight back to Raymond's apartment. Instead, I went to the mall, where I bought new clothes, essentials, everything I hadn't had time to take from home. Then I visited the bank to see if the proceeds from the sale of the house had arrived. It was already there. A substantial sum, enough to start a new life. The day flew by unnoticed in these mundane worries. Returning to Raymond's apartment in the evening, I suddenly realized that I hadn't checked my phone since morning. Turning it on, I saw 27 missed calls from Ben and a dozen from an unfamiliar number that I suspected belonged to Samantha. There was one voicemail message. I pressed play, preparing for an angry tirade. Dad, Ben's voice sounded choked, like he was barely holding back his emotions. We just got a delivery. There's some kind of mistake, isn't there? You couldn't... Call me back, please. We need to talk. I deleted the message before I heard the rest of it. There was nothing to talk about. It was all said and done. Raymond was waiting for me at the apartment with the news. The courier delivered the notice around 3 in the afternoon, he said. Peter called, said it was official, as planned. How did they react? Despite my best efforts, I couldn't suppress my curiosity. Raymond grinned. Peter said the courier described it as Extreme surprise turning to panic. Your sister-in-law tried to refuse to accept the document, but the courier was persistent. Explained that failure to accept did not cancel the notice, but only made the process more complicated. I nodded. It sounded like Samantha was trying to ignore a reality she didn't like. They've been trying to reach me, I said. But I'm not ready for that conversation. And you shouldn't be ready, Raymond put his hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do. Now they're reaping the rewards of their actions. For the next few days, the phone didn't stop ringing. Ben called 5 or 6 times a day, leaving voicemails, texting. His tactics varied from angry accusations to pitiful pleas, from threatening legal action to trying to induce guilt toward his grandchildren. Dad, you can't do this to us. We're going to sue. Daddy, please, let's meet and talk things out. There has to be some kind of solution. Chloe cries every night asking why Grandpa is kicking us out of the house. The last message was particularly painful. I didn't want to hurt my grandchildren, but I knew Samantha and Ben were using them as emotional leverage. Samantha wasn't giving up either. Her approach was more practical, but no less insistent. Mr. Pruitt, we are willing to discuss financial compensation for an emergency eviction. It's in your best interest. Edwin, 30 days is an unrealistic time frame for a family with children. Can we negotiate an extension of that period? We agree to move out, but we need more time and compensation for the repairs we've made to the house. I didn't answer any of the messages, didn't return any of the phone calls. The wound of betrayal was too fresh, and I wasn't ready for a conversation that would inevitably devolve into accusations and manipulation. Raymond supported me in this decision. They're trying to drag you into the negotiations, he said. Oh, but you have nothing to negotiate with them. The house is sold, the papers are signed, the money is received. End of story. I knew he was right, but it still felt heavy on my heart. Despite everything that had happened, Ben was still my son. The little boy I taught to ride his bike, whose abrasions I kissed, whose nightmares I chased away. Breaking those bonds is not painless, no matter how sure you are that you're right. The 5th day after I sold the house, there was a knock on the door. I was alone. Raymond was away on business in a neighboring town. Looking through the peephole, I saw Ben. He looked exhausted, circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, unhealthy complexion. Part of me wanted to open up, to listen to him, maybe try to explain. But the other part, the part that remembered his betrayal, remained wary. I didn't move, hoping he'd think no one was home. Ben stood for another minute, then pulled out his cell phone and dialed a number. My phone, lying on the table, vibrated. I didn't answer it. Ben left a message, then put an envelope in the mail slot and left. I waited until his footsteps died down the stairs, then picked up the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, a rarity in this digital age. Dad, I know you don't want to talk to me, and I understand why. What happened between us is unforgivable. I allowed Samantha to manipulate me, allowed greed and material considerations to come before a relationship with you. There's no excuse for that. But I'm asking you to think about your children. Ethan and Chloe are innocent. They love you and they don't understand what's happening. It's a huge stress for them, losing the home they grew up in and losing their beloved grandfather at the same time. Samantha and I are looking for a new place to live, but it's harder than we thought. The real estate market isn't in our favor right now, and our savings aren't as large as we had planned. We'll find something, but it's going to take time. I'm not asking you to cancel the sale of the house. I realize that's impossible. I'm not asking for money, although frankly we could use it. All I'm asking is that you stay in touch with your grandchildren. They shouldn't have to suffer because of adult mistakes. You know my number. Call me if you ever want to talk. Ben, I reread the letter several times. It seemed sincere, but I no longer trusted my ability to judge Ben's sincerity. Too many times he'd said one thing and done another. Too many times he'd chosen Samantha and her plans over his father. But the thought of grandchildren kept me on my toes. Ethan and Chloe really weren't to blame for what had happened between the adults. They were simply hostage to a situation created by their parents' greed and manipulation. I put the letter on the table and walked over to the window. The day was clear, sunny, a normal day for most people. But for me, every day since leaving home had been filled with a mixture of relief, bitterness, and uncertainty. I thought about my life, what was behind me and what lay ahead, and suddenly it hit me. I'm not alone. I have another child, a daughter, Olivia, who lived in Oregon and with whom I had barely spoken in recent years. This estrangement was not natural. It happened gradually after Elaine died and intensified when Ben and Samantha moved in with me. They always found reasons why calling or seeing Olivia was inconvenient or untimely. Dad, she has her own life. You shouldn't impose. Dad, you know you and her have always had a complicated relationship. Dad, after that Uncle Robert's inheritance story, she clearly doesn't want to socialize with the family. And I believed it. I believed that my own daughter didn't want to see me, didn't want to talk to me, believed that our relationship was hopelessly damaged. Looking back now, I saw how easily I'd let Ben and Samantha isolate me from Olivia, how accepted their version of events without checking. I pulled out my phone and found Olivia's number. It was still in my contacts, even though I hadn't called it in. How long? 2 years? 3? Too long. My finger hovered over the call button. What would I tell her? How will I explain my long silence? Would she believe me? Would she even want to talk? But if I don't call now, when will I call? If I don't try to reconnect, what will I have left? Loneliness and bitterness are bad companions for old age. I pressed the call button and put the phone to my ear. It beeped. 1, 2, 3. I was ready to hear the answering machine when there was a click and a woman's voice said, "Hello? Olivia?" My voice shook. "It's Dad." Pause. A long, hard pause, during which I mentally braced myself for rejection, for coldness, for mistrust. Daddy question mark. She sounded surprised but not cold. "Is it really you?" "Yes, honey, it's me." I felt tears coming to my eyes. "I'm sorry I haven't called for so long. I thought—" She hesitated. "Ben said you didn't want to talk to me, that you were still mad about the whole Uncle Robert thing." Of course he said that. Ben's always been a master manipulator, long before he met Samantha. She just honed his innate talents. "That's not true," I said firmly. "I was never angry with you about Robert's inheritance. You had every right to your share, and I always understood that. But why then?" Her voice trembled. "Why didn't you call? Why didn't you answer my letters?" "What letters?" I was genuinely surprised. "I wrote to you after Mom died, several times, and at Christmas every year. I sent pictures of the kids. I never got those letters. I never saw those pictures." Ben and Samantha intercepted my mail, filtered it, decided what I should see and what I shouldn't. "Olivia," I said, feeling anger mixed with pain, "I never got your letters, and I called you many times. But Ben always said you were busy, that you had your own life, that you didn't want to talk." There was a pause during which we both realized the extent of the deception. "He lied," Olivia said quietly. "He'd been lying to both of us all these years." It had been 2 months since the day I'd sold the house and severed my toxic relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. A life that seemed shattered in that moment was slowly taking on new contours, new meaning. My new home was in Pinridge, a small town 30 kilometers from Irwindale, close enough to get to familiar places if necessary, and far enough away to make a fresh start. It was a small one-story house with 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room, and a cozy kitchen. The main advantage was a veranda overlooking a small but well-maintained garden with a few fruit trees. In the garage, I set up a workshop, smaller than the previous one, but quite functional. I spent the first few weeks settling in. I ordered new furniture, repainted the walls, replaced some windows. Physical labor has always been the best medicine for my mental wounds. With each nail driven, each wall painted, I could feel the past receding, giving way to the new. Raymond often stopped by to help. We worked together like the good old days when we were young builders with ambition and energy. "Nice place, Ed," he said as we sat on the veranda after a day's work, sipping cold beers. "It's cozy but not cramped. And the garden's nice." "Yeah," I agreed. "I'm thinking of planting an apple tree, just like the one Elaine and I had." Raymond nodded, understanding without words. The apple tree was a symbol, not an attempt to recreate the past, but a way of keeping in touch with what was important and precious. "When is Olivia coming?" he asked. "Next Friday." I couldn't hold back a smile. "They'll be here for a week. Sophia is 7, Jacob is 5. Kids I've never met, but I already love." "Did you get their rooms ready yet?" "Yes. I nodded. I bought new beds, linens, even a few toys. I want them to feel at home. They will, Raymond assured me. Kids adapt quickly, and if Olivia is anything like you, she's already told them all about Grandpa Edwin. I smiled, imagining Olivia telling her kids about me, about the grandfather they'd never seen, but had heard so much about the grandpa who built a house with his own hands, who knows how to fix broken toys and tell interesting stories. Our daily phone conversations with our daughter grew longer and more candid. We were catching up on the missing years, telling each other about our lives, our joys, our sorrows. I learned that she was happily married to Nate, that she taught literature at a local college, that she wrote children's books in her spare time. She learned about my life after Elaine's death, about Ben and Samantha's manipulations, about my decision to sell the house and start over. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said one day. "Not everyone would have had the strength to do what you did." Those words meant more to me than she could have imagined. My daughter's pride, understanding, and support were a balm to a soul scarred by her son's betrayal. On Thursday night, the day before Olivia arrived, I decided to drive to a large supermarket in a neighboring town. I wanted to buy groceries, drinks, everything I needed to welcome my dear guests. The list was long, from fresh fruit to a special kind of ice cream that Olivia had told me Sophia loved. I was pushing the cart down the aisles, checking the list, when I heard a familiar voice. "Edwin? Edwin Pruitt? Is that really you?" I turned around and saw Mary Dawson, my former neighbor from Irwindale, a full-figured woman in her 60s with kind eyes and perpetually disheveled gray hair. Elaine and I had been friends with her and her husband Frank for over 20 years. "Mary," I was genuinely excited to meet her. "What a surprise. Do you live here now too?" "No, no," she said with a wave of her hand. "I'm just visiting my sister for her birthday. She lives in Pine Ridge. What about you?" "I heard you sold the house and moved away. Ben was in a terrible state." I tensed at the mention of my son, but tried to keep my expression neutral. "Yeah, I moved here a couple months ago. Bought a small house near the center." "Oh, Edwin." Mary lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Shitsano. There are so many rumors in the neighborhood about what happened between you and Ben. Some say you had a fight over the inheritance. Some say Samantha drove you out of the house. The truth is much simpler and more complicated than that, Mary," I interrupted her. "But this is a family matter, and I prefer not to discuss the details." "Of course," she nodded understandingly, but I could see her eyes hungry for details. It was so unexpected, especially considering how things ended for Ben and Samantha." "What do you mean?" Despite my decision not to take an interest in their lives, I couldn't suppress my curiosity. Mary glanced around, as if checking to see if anyone was eavesdropping, then moved closer. "They moved out 3 weeks after you did. Some official people came, and they packed up and left. They say Samantha lost her realtor's license because of some fraud scandal. And Ben," she shook her head, "Ben looked terrible, thin, gaunt. Frank had seen him at the gas station a couple weeks ago, said he hardly recognized him." I felt a pang of regret. Despite all the betrayals, Ben was still my son, and the thought of him suffering brought me no joy. "Where are they now?" I asked. "They rented a small apartment on the outskirts of Irwindale. A one-bedroom, can you imagine? After such a big house." Mary shook her head. "And they say their marriage is falling apart. Frank saw them fighting in the supermarket parking lot. Samantha yelled that Ben had ruined her career, and he accused her of cheating and manipulation." I nodded, not knowing what to say. Part of me felt bitterness, not gloating, but exactly bitterness at the way things had turned out. That the son I loved, who had once been the light of my life, was in this situation, partly through his own fault, partly because of the woman he'd allowed to manipulate him. "And the children?" I asked, thinking of Ethan and Chloe, my grandchildren, whom I hadn't seen since the night I'd left home. "The kids are with them," Mary said. "Huh, but they say they had to change schools. The new one is farther away and not as good as the old one. I feel sorry for the kids. It's not their fault." "Yes," I agreed quietly. "Children are never to blame for the mistakes of adults." We talked for a few more minutes. About the weather, about the new stores in the neighborhood, about Frank's health. Then we said goodbye, exchanging phone numbers and promises to meet for coffee sometime. As I returned home with my shopping, I couldn't stop thinking about Ben, Samantha, and the kids, about how quickly a life built on lies and manipulation crumbles, about how dearly you sometimes have to pay for your mistakes. But then I thought about my new life, about the house that was becoming cozy and dear with each passing day, about the daughter, grandchildren, and son-in-law who would be visiting tomorrow, about the opportunity to start anew, without deception and manipulation, with people who really love me, not as a source of material wealth, but as a man, a father, a grandfather. And that thought brought not only relief, but hope. Hope that at 65, life does not end, but can be filled with new meaning, new relationships, new joy. Friday came clear and warm. I got up early, checked the house once again, making sure everything was ready for the guests. The linens are fresh, the refrigerator is full, the children's rooms are decorated with colorful posters and stuffed toys. Around noon, the car pulled up, a silver minivan Olivia had rented at the airport. I stepped out onto the porch, my heart pounding with excitement. The door opened and I saw her, my daughter, whom I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. She'd changed a little healthier, her hair shorter, but her smile was still the same. A bright, genuine smile, so much like Elaine's. Dash, Daddy! She rushed over to me and hugged me tight, just like when she was a little girl. I hugged her back, feeling a lump in my throat. My girl, my daughter. A living reminder that all is not lost, that family bonds can be restored if both parties want them to be. The others got out of the car. A tall man with a kind face and a neat beard. Nate, her husband. A girl with curly hair and curious eyes. Sophia. And a boy hiding shyly behind his father. Jacob. Children, Olivia said, pulling away from me but not letting go of my hand. This is your grandpa, Edwin, the one I've told you so much about. Sophia stepped forward, looking at me with the directness of a 7-year-old. Did you really build the house with your own hands? She asked. I smiled, touched by what Olivia was telling the kids about me. Yes, sweetheart. A long time ago when I was younger. Did you build this house too? She looked around at my new house. No, I bought this one, but I've done a lot of remodeling and improvements. Can you show me? Her eyes lit up with curiosity. Oh, sure, I held out my hand to her. Would you like a tour? She nodded and placed her small palm in mine. That simple touch, a child's trusting hand, made me feel a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Jacob, seeing my sister's enthusiasm, became bolder too and came closer. Do you have any tools? He asked shyly. Mom says you can fix anything in the world. Oh, no. Well, not everything, I smiled, but a lot of things. And yes, I have a workshop in the garage. Would you like to see it? He nodded, and I saw the same spark of curiosity in his eyes that I'd seen in his sister's. My grandchildren. Children I hadn't known until today, but who had already taken a place in my heart. Nate approached last, extending his hand for a handshake. It's nice to finally meet you, sir, he said. Olivia's told me so much about you. Likewise, Nate, I shook his hand. And please, call me Edwin. Sir makes me feel even older. He laughed, and the ice was finally broken. We all went into the house together, and I gave them a tour. The living room with the big TV. Can I watch cartoons? Jacob asked immediately. The kitchen with the new stove. I'll help you cook, Grandpa. Sophia volunteered. The bedrooms for everyone. I don't have my own room at home. I share with Jacob. Sophia admitted with the importance of an older sister. Then we went out to the garden, where I had already planted a young apple tree, still thin and fragile, but full of potential for growth. An apple tree like you and Mom have, Olivia remarked quietly, standing next to me while the kids explored the garden and Nate unloaded the car. Yeah, I nodded, not trying to recreate the past, just keeping in touch with what was important. I understand, she squeezed my hand. Mom would have approved. She always said to remember the past but live in the present. She was a wise woman, your mother, I smiled, remembering Elaine, her laugh, her wisdom, her ability to see the heart of things. Dad, Olivia turned to me, her face serious. I want you to know that we're not just visiting. We want you to be a part of our lives, a permanent part. The kids need to know their grandfather. And I've missed you all these years. I hugged her, unable to put into words how much those words meant to me. How long I had lived with the feeling that my family had broken up, that I was alone. And now that one part of my family had betrayed me, the other, which I'd almost forgotten existed because of Ben's manipulations, was back in my life. In the evening, we had a barbecue in the garden. I grilled steaks, Nate helped with the vegetables, Olivia set the table, and the kids ran around the lawn, playing some elaborate game only they could understand. It was an idyllic picture, an ordinary family dinner, nothing special to most people, but to me, a true miracle after years of loneliness and alienation. Over dinner, Olivia talked about her work, the book she was writing, her plans for the future. Nate shared stories about his architecture firm and the projects he was working on. The kids interrupted each other, talking about school, friends, homework. I listened to them, watched them, and was overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude that life had given me a second chance, not just to survive the betrayal, but to find new joy, new connections, new meaning. After dinner, when the kids were asleep and Nate had delicately left us alone, citing road fatigue, Olivia and I sat on the veranda, sipping wine and gazing at the stars. I think about Ben a lot, she admitted quietly, about how he could do that to you. We've never been particularly close, but I never thought he was capable of such betrayal. Neither did I sighed. And you know what the saddest part is? I still love him. Despite everything he's done, he's still my son. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? I wondered. It was a question I had asked myself many times over the past months. I don't know, I answered honestly. Forgive, maybe. Forgetting, never. And to trust again, that would be hard. I understand, Olivia nodded. Just, don't close the door completely, okay? People change. Sometimes they have to fall really low to realize what's really important. You've gotten wise, I smiled. Just like Mom. She smiled back, and in that smile I saw Elaine, her warmth, her understanding, her ability to see the best in people even in their worst moments. The next week flew by like a day. We went on field trips, walked in the park, cooked together, watched movies in the evenings. I showed Jacob the basics of tools and we built a birdhouse for the garden together. Sophia helped me bake an apple pie from Elaine's recipe, not quite as delicious as she made, but still special because we made it together. Olivia and Nate often left us alone with the kids, giving us the opportunity to make our own relationships, to create our own memories. And with each passing day, I felt the bond between us grow, not just biological, but emotional, based on shared interests, on laughter, on the little secrets that every grandfather has with his grandchildren. On the last night before they left, when the kids were asleep and Nate was packing, Olivia made a proposal that changed everything. Dad, she said, sitting next to me on the couch, Nate and I have talked about this a lot. We want you to move to Oregon with us. Not now, not if you're not ready. But think about it. We have a big house, plenty of room. The kids adore you, and you shouldn't be alone. I was touched by her offer, but I was in no hurry to respond. Thank you, dear. That's very generous of you, but I'm just settling in here, making a new home. I know, she nodded, and I'm not asking you to decide right now. Just know that you're always welcome in our home, not for a week or two, but as long as you want to be. And if someday you decide you're ready to move, you're welcome. I hugged her, feeling my emotions overwhelm me. Not just gratitude for the offer, but the realization that I wasn't alone. That after all the betrayals, all the losses, I still had a family. Not the one that betrayed me, but the one that accepted me, supported me, reached out to me. They left in the morning, with promises to call every day, with plans for Christmas. They invited me to their house, with lots of pictures taken that week and saved in both their phones and their hearts. The house was suddenly quiet, empty without children's laughter or conversation. But this emptiness wasn't oppressive like before. It was a light void, a temporary state that would soon be filled with new visits, new memories, new connections. I went out into the garden and looked at the young apple tree, which was already putting on its first leaves. Perhaps in a year or two, it will bear its first fruit. Or maybe by then, I would be in Oregon, starting another new chapter of my life. But for now, here I was, in a home I had chosen for myself, in a life I had built by my own rules, with a family who loved me not for what I could give materially, but for who I was to them. And in that realization was not only the bitterness of my son's betrayal, but also the release from toxic relationships, from manipulation, from a life that was not mine. I suddenly realized a simple truth. Family isn't always those you're related to by blood. Sometimes it's those who choose you, who see your worth, who love you wholeheartedly and unconditionally. And in my case, my true family was now in Oregon. Daughter, son-in-law, grandchildren who welcomed me into their hearts despite years of separation. And as for Ben and Samantha, perhaps Olivia was right. Maybe they needed to fall very low to realize what was really important. And if Ben ever came to me with genuine remorse, with a real understanding of his mistakes, I'd find the strength to listen to him. Not necessarily to forgive him completely, not necessarily to restore the previous relationship, but at least to give him a chance for some kind of reconciliation. But that was a matter for the future. And now, in the present, I had a new life, a new home, new opportunities. And for the first time in a long time, I looked into the future not with anxiety and bitterness, but with hope and expectation, waiting for new chapters in a story that, as it turned out, was far from over.